Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Making Things Fun, Cool, and Sexy. I have an awesome interview today that will truly inspire you. Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Making Things Fun, Cool, and Sexy. I'm your host, Christine Hollino, and today I'm honored to have this young woman as my guest on the show. She isn't in industrial manufacturing, but she's here to demystify that Gen Z, our next generation, are lazy and entitled. She's a Stanford University grad, worked at Vogue magazine in Singapore before entering tech in Silicon Valley, and in the past 2 years, she's published 2 books. Her first book, The Fraud Squad, was a buzz pick by Good Morning America and a #1 new release in Asian American literature on Kindle. She has made headlines for learning how to write a novel and making 6 figures during the pandemic. Forbes has honored her on their 30 under 30 list, and Tatler named her a leader of tomorrow. Her work ethics are so incredible, and she truly inspires me. I'm super excited to introduce Kyla Zhao onto the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being on the show. You truly are such an inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you.
So you came to America to get into one of the most distinguished universities in this country. You worked at Vogue magazine. You got a job in tech. And while working in tech, you wrote 2 books that have been published. How are you able to accomplish so much?
Honestly, with a lot of coffee, but I think ultimately I'm just really afraid of not maximizing my potential. I feel like there are so many things I want to do with my life, so many things I want to explore, and I do sometimes feel like I'm running out of time to do everything that I want, which is a mentality that I'm trying to get rid of. But yeah, ultimately, I think a lot of it is driven partly by a desire to always be improving, but also partly by fear that I'm not doing enough.
You are a mirror image of me. Like when you said that, I 100% can relate to you. So I come from a family who has really high expectations of their daughter, right? Like they want me to achieve so much and do so much. Can you relate to this? And do you think this is what has also pushed you? Because it has pushed me.
Yeah, 100%. I think growing up, my parents had really high expectations for me. And it's funny because now, when they see me doing so much, they're always like, slow down, your health is the most important. But I'm like, you raised me this way. Like, the drive that I have now, it was inculcated in me since young. That's how I was raised.
Same here. I work full time. I'll do this podcast on my free time on the weekends. And my parents too, they think that I am doing way too much. But just like you, I want to achieve so much every day. I want to max it out to the max, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing I'm still trying to learn is when to slow down, when to stop. That was something that has not been taught to me. So it's something that I'm trying to learn by myself now.
I notice for myself, I go through phases of working super hard, and then I kind of crash and I get burnt out for a couple months, and then I'm back up. Do you experience that?
Yeah, 100%. I think creative burnout is a very valid and familiar sensation to many of us working in the creative industry, like me with writing, you with your podcast. And I'm still trying to learn how to approach everything in a more sustainable way where I don't feel like, I'm pushing myself to the max and then I inevitably crash and burn. So yeah, once again, it's a learning process.
What are you doing right now to kind of balance out your life?
I'm trying to learn to be better about saying no to certain opportunities. I used to have a scarcity mindset where I feel so bad about saying no because I'm like, what if the opportunity doesn't come again? What if this is my one and only shot? And then I try to do too much. I take on more than I can handle. And then, like you said, I just burn out. So I'm learning how to say no to things. And even though I feel regret sometimes, I tell myself that it's going to be better for me in the long term.
So learning how to set boundaries.
Yeah, and also trying to develop a more long-term view of things. Like, sure, this will be a cool thing to do in a short term. I get to put it on my resume. But in the long term, it's just going to make me lose interest in activity. And then what's all that for? Nothing.
That's so true. And Asian parents, they tend not to tell us that they're proud of us because they think that if they tell us they're proud of us, we'll stop working so hard. Have your parents told you that they're proud of you because of all of your accomplishments?
They started saying it a lot more after I became an adult, but I think back in school, especially before college, like I think praise wasn't super common.
Same here. Like, I feel like my parents, they don't like to praise, but I love my parents, and because of how they've raised me, I'm super grateful because it's given me this drive and ambition. So like, no hard feelings towards my parents, but it's a different way, right? Like, I see in my American friends, or more, I'm American too, but like my Caucasian friends who grew up in a different family, and it's completely different, right? Like, they constantly tell their kids that they're proud of them. So yeah, it's quite different being Asian and living in society.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever want to go to like any extreme, but I do feel like there must be a happy medium. And you know, like I'm not close to having kids myself yet, but I do sometimes wonder like what parts of the way I was parented would I keep and what I do to my own kids, and what parts would I change?
Exactly. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about your two books, Valley Verified and The Fraud Squad?
Yes, so The Fraud Squad is my first book. It was the book that got me started in writing. I started writing the first draft of The Fraud Squad when I was a third-year student at Stanford University. And so this was my pandemic book. I started writing it during the pandemic. And then I sold it to Penguin Random House, which is, I think, the largest publisher in the United States. And they actually wanted to sign me for two books, and Valley Verified is my second book, and it comes out exactly 1 year after The Fraud Squad. So just this past month. Yeah.
Amazing. What inspired you to write both of these books?
Yeah, so I think of The Fraud Squad as a love letter to my home country of Singapore. So like you said in the introduction, I was born and raised outside of America. I came here for college. During the pandemic, like all my international friends were going back home to be with their families, and I wanted to do the same. But it was also when every country was shutting down its borders, and I wasn't sure if I would be allowed back in America if I were to leave. And so I decided to stay put. And for most of 2020, I was living alone by myself in California. I was really lonely, really homesick. And so writing a story set in Singapore was my way of staying connected to home at a time when I didn't know when I could be back home again. And then Valley Verified, I also wrote it at a time in my life when I was going through a big life and career transition. I had just moved from high fashion to high tech. And Valley Verified is like a love letter to my adopted home of the Bay Area. So I think these two books capture different slices of time in my life.
Awesome. And I could totally relate to Valley Verified because I love fashion. I'm in a very masculine industry, so I could definitely relate to Valley Verified and living in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Yes. What's next for you? What do you think? Is there gonna be a third book?
Well, there is going to be a third book coming out this September, but it's a children's novel. It's about a female chess player who makes a bet with a sexist teammate that girls can be as good as boys when it comes to chess. I grew up playing chess, so once again, the story is very close to my own heart, to my own life.
Wow, all of these books have such great meaning and messages. I could totally see Hollywood making this into a movie one of these days. Like, I would love to see Valley Verified as a movie because Silicon Valley is so well known and also mysterious, right? Like, until you actually live here, you don't really know what Silicon Valley is about. There's people who are like billionaires walking down the street and they're dressed like an everyday Joe, right? So it's really, really interesting, and I look forward to seeing this as a movie, hopefully, one of these days.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. And let's say if it does turn into a movie, who would you want to play the main character?
Oh, this is so hard. I always struggle whenever I try to like visualize my characters. I know I definitely want it to be an Asian woman. I would love it if it was more of like an up-and-coming Asian actress. So that, you know, she can hopefully get like her big break rather than it being an established actress. I would love to see Michelle Yeoh in a movie in some capacity. She could appear like in whatever role she wants. And yeah, I would love that.
So The name of the show is Making Things Fun, Cool, and Sexy. I'm in the manufacturing industry, and there's this reputation for Gen Z that they're lazy and entitled. Your resume is the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
You are Gen Z, but you work so hard. Your work ethics are incredible. Why do you think that society has labeled the majority of Gen Z to be lazy and entitled?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it partly stems from maybe not having a full understanding of the different career paths that Gen Zs are exploring. I feel like a lot of the jobs that my fellow Gen Zs are pursuing, they didn't exist one generation ago. They didn't even exist a few years ago. Things like content creation, being an influencer. I know these jobs get a bad rap, but I know people who work in content creation. We both do in some capacity, and it's so much hard work that people don't see. And if you were to just present it, yeah, I spend my time making videos, I spend my time writing little things, people are going to be like, yeah, that sounds lazy. But I think it's just because this is such a new career, such a new field and industry. And what people don't understand, they just have a tendency to sweep it under the rug and to not take it as seriously. So I don't think it's that Gen Zs are lazy per se, although I'm sure there are lazy people in every generation. I think it's just that careers have diversified so much. My fellow Gen Zs are exploring a lot of different things that did not used to exist, and it's also hard to explain it sometimes. And when you can't explain the work that you are doing, people think you're not working, but that's not the case.
That's true. Well, right now, AI is very popular, right? And
Yeah.
that wasn't around when I was in high school. It was just new right
Yeah.
now. How can we motivate or inspire your generation to get into manufacturing, something to work with your hands versus
Yeah.
creating content or software, AI, all of that?
Yeah, I think trying to establish a personal relevance of how manufacturing could link back to their actual passions and interests. So for instance, I'm interested in fashion, so I love how 3D manufacturing is playing an increasingly bigger role in the fashion industry. So I think that's one way to make it fun, cool, and sexy.
Love that. Yes. I was just going to say, yes, we just need to make it fun, cool, and sexy so that your generation can see the fun, cool, and sexy side of manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that manufacturing is an industry, it's such an integral part of American economy, of American history. But because it was so integral in American history, it has more of people might have a historical, outdated perspective of what the industry is like. And I think just showing how it's actually really, keeping up with the times and even driving some of the trends in a lot of other industries would be so helpful.
What other industries would you be interested besides fashion or book writing? But you like a plethora of things.
I think nothing really jumps out at me at the moment, but I'm also trying not to close myself off to anything. If something suitable comes along that piques my interest, I would explore it.
Well, I love your fashion sense, Kyla.
Oh, thank you.
How has fashion been for you working in tech? Have you been able to just wear pinks, wear girly clothes to work?
Yeah, I do that. I don't even mind if people say anything now. I think fashion is how I express myself, and it makes me feel good about myself when I put in effort into how I dress, when I think about my outfit. And yeah, I just do what makes me happy.
Well, I keep telling you that you're an inspiration, and
thanks.
you truly are. I hope you continue to be successful in everything you do in life.
Thank you.
I always end the podcast with these two questions for my guests. I'm super into self-development, so I think that every successful person has to go through a lot of failures in order to be successful. Can you share any failures that you went through to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think I think two big ones jump out at me. The first was way back in high school when I failed a really important math exam. I think I got an E grade. I was last in class or something. And I had to attend remedial math classes. And I just kept telling myself then, like, oh, I don't have the brain for math. Like, my brain is just not wired for numbers. I'm more of like a words person. But that mindset is actually so damaging and so harmful when you start to believe that you're just naturally not capable of doing something. And so, like I eventually turned my math grade around, but it took a lot of like questioning myself, a lot of doubting myself, a lot of support and encouragement from family, friends, really good teachers to help me realize that I don't have to limit myself, and that one bad grade or even a series of bad grades doesn't mean that your brain is not capable of mastering it. It just means that maybe right now the approach you're taking isn't working, but it's just time to try another approach, not to reject this field completely and not to count yourself out completely. And the second one is actually when I moved from fashion to tech. I used to like spend all my time writing articles. It was really easy for me. That was what I felt comfortable doing. And then I moved into tech, into a way more technical role where I'm supposed to be coding all day long, where I'm surrounded by data scientists and software engineers with STEM degrees, and I felt so inadequate. I felt like I didn't have the background, the skill set that I lucked into this job. And as sooner or later, everyone else would realize it. And again, I think I was counting myself out. I told myself, no, I don't have the STEM brain. I don't have the quantitative mindset. And again, it was like a learning process. So I have to work through that limit for myself, that mental limitation.
That's really incredible. So you see a pattern in your mindset, right? That you reach a block or a limit, and then you're able to like break through. Usually, how long does it take you? Like, is it months? Is it weeks that you see the block and then you're able to turn things around?
Honestly, it could be years, and it's not a linear process. There are still a lot of days when I doubt myself, when I think I just don't have the natural capabilities. It's actually something I learned in psychology, because I studied psychology in college. It's the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. So for fixed mindset, when you succeed at something, you think it's because of your natural skills. Whereas someone with the growth mindset, when they succeed, they think it's because of their efforts. And I think that, can be traced all the way back to when I was young. Like, whenever I did well in something, people praised me for being smart. And so over time, I got so addicted to the praise that I was afraid of trying anything new in case it failed and the praise stopped coming. And that was because when you're getting praised for your skills, you just think that the skills are something you naturally have or don't have. It's not something that you can learn and develop. And so I'm trying to build more of a growth mindset for myself instead of, like resolving to just having a fixed mindset.
Wow, I have never heard of growth and fixed mindset. I'm definitely going to have to look into that. You are actually so aware of self-development more than you probably are aware of.
I think it's my psychology degree. I think it's like a lot of psychologists just like spend all their time thinking about development and self-development. I used to do research at a nursery school on Stanford University's campus, and we actually apply a lot of like advanced psychology principles to how the kids are being educated. And one of the things that we were taught from really early on is don't praise the kids for something that they accomplish. So don't say something like, oh, your drawing looks really nice today. Don't say that. Say something about the process. Oh, I really like how you use the color blue. Yeah.
Wow. That is so awesome. And this is what parents need to learn as well.
Yeah, I wish I had that when I was a kid, but it's also such a new concept. I think a lot of people are still not aware of it. And honestly, it is tempting, right, to just praise someone for the end result rather than the actions they took to get there.
So now that we're talking about psychology, I want to talk about imposter syndrome, because that is something that many people are discussing nowadays. I suffer from that, right? Like, I have a lot of insecurities in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you have imposter syndrome, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, all the time. I don't even try to overcome it. I just accept it as such a natural way of life, something that I'm going to experience at any point of my life, at any point of my career. One thing that really surprised me about a reception to my book is, like I wrote it as like a young woman in my 20s. I thought that my target audience would be women in their 20s, 30s, but I've had women from all stages of their career, even women who are retired, reaching out to me and being like, wow, I really relate to this. I just went through something similar. And it's, you know, on one hand, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like imposter syndrome, it's never going to be something we can solve. But on the other hand, it's reassuring. Like once you accept it, you're just like, okay, like I'm going to feel uncomfortable sometimes. I'm going to feel bad about myself sometimes. But that's okay, because it doesn't mean that I have failed as a person. It's just like a mindset that I can work through. Yeah.
You are so wise for your age.
Oh, thank you. It's easy to say that. I'm still trying to practice it.
At 25, you have done so much. You have an awesome mindset. And again, like
I try.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Okay, the other question I always ask all the guests is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay, I don't even know where I see myself in 5 hours, but, and this is going to sound like such a cop-out answer, but I'm genuinely not trying to think too far ahead into the future. When I do that, it honestly overwhelms me. It scares me a little bit. I just want to take things like one step at a time, even one day at a time sometimes. Because if you asked me 5 years ago, would I ever be an author? I would be like, no way, I can't imagine myself writing. I'm not capable of it. I'm not creative enough to come up with an idea. I don't have enough stamina to write 100,000 words. But then, you know, like now I have like 3 books. And I think life can really surprise you if you don't try to have like a fixed course for yourself. But just in terms of like my personal development, in 5 years, I hope that I have developed more of a growth mindset. I don't quite know how to measure it, but I think it's one of those things when if I have it, and I'll know it.
I am so happy I got to interview you and to demystify the Gen Z, right? Like people have given you guys a really bad reputation, but when we actually talk to you and dive in, you guys are so wise and we can learn so much from you. Like I am so amazed by you, Kyla, and today was probably one of the best interviews I've ever had, to be honest.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, yeah, it's so nice to be on this podcast. It's so nice to be sharing about some of these things. Like I said, you know, I'm still trying to practice what I preach. It's hard, right? Like, yeah, like everyone's a work in progress.
I love the transparency. I love the authenticity in you. Like, keep it up, girl. You are awesome. Where can we buy your books and where can we find you on social media?
I am on basically every social media platform. I am on Instagram, Twitter, or I guess it's called X now. I'm also on TikTok, and I have a newsletter. It's Kyla Zhao on Substack. And you can find my books like at any online retailer, at just about any bookstore. I mean, Amazon's always a safe bet.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.